The more that we learned about it, we became angry. I became angry. Some of my colleagues became angry. Just because you see these guys and you know what's going on, and the fact that they don't seem to care. This is actually the picture that made us realize how special the album is, because this is the picture where we first noticed Joseph Mengele among photographs taken at a party, most likely in the summer of 1944. And that was kind of a eureka moment, because I knew what he looked like, and I also knew that there were supposedly no photographs taken of him actually on the camp complex. So once we noticed him, that was a very big moment, because we realized that this is really something incredible. This is really something special. The interesting thing about Mengele is that he had both a PhD and an MD. So this is a very smart man that we're talking about, 32 years old, and this is what he's decided to do with his knowledge, is to put it into this kind of crime. Now, many people know Dr. Joseph Mengele, but Dr. Karl Klauberg was not a very nice man either. Klauberg's specialty was female sterilization. He experimented with female sterilization using acid. Though he looks like a jovial pediatrician in this photo, not a nice man either. Solohuta was an SS retreat facility. It was considered almost like a sub-camp of the Auschwitz complex. This photograph was taken upon Hooker's trip to Solohuta with the SS women. The page is actually entitled, "Here There Are Blueberries," and it shows Carl Hooker handing out the bowls of blueberries. And this photo shows that they've eaten all of their blueberries. The girl on the fifth to the left is pretending to cry, that there are no more blueberries for her to eat, and so she's theatrically pretending that this is an enormous tragedy, when in reality we're about 30 kilometers away from a really big tragedy, much bigger than no more blueberries.
I could have told you theoretically that these people went on their off hours and they spent all day killing women, and then they made love to women at night. They spent all day murdering children, and then they went home and embraced their own. I know that theoretically. But to see guys who had spent all day doing what they had done, flirting at night, to see them frolicking and laughing, to see them walking in the woods, to see them engaging in petty banter, while they were doing what they were doing, oh, does that make you angrier? In order to deal with this material, on one sense you have to put it a little bit away. You have to keep a little bit of a distance, because if not, it burns you, it sears you, it shatters you, it destroys you. But if you're not prepared to face that shattering, that destruction, you can't really understand this material. What we have at Auschwitz is the presence of absence. In other words, you feel the absence of the people who were there. You have a much greater sense at Birkenau of the killers than you do of their victims. Auschwitz is a place of ghosts. We only show you a semblance of the shadows because the very reality of what happened could overwhelm everything, and we couldn't face it. So we show you a glimpse into the shadow, and we trust the viewer, we trust the audience, we trust all of us to add to the glimpse that we're providing and give you a little bit more.
Well, the Auschwitz album is a unique album. It's a collection of photographs that were taken in Auschwitz at the end of May 1944 of the arrival of trains of Jews from Hungary. The photographers are two SS photographers, and they created an album with approximately 200 photographs of this arrival and the selection and the processing of this trainload of several thousand Jews that arrived at Auschwitz.
There are so many chronological similarities between the Jacob album and the Hooker album. The Jacobs album was taken on May 26th and May 27th of 1944. Carl Hooker arrived at the camp to take over his new job as the adjutant to the commandant on May 25th, 1944, one day before Lily Jacobs' transport arrived, one day before the photos in the Jacob album were taken. His photo album begins 5 days later, on June 1st.
You have two albums. One shows monsters at play, and the other shows the work of the monsters. But it shows the work of the monsters not by focusing on the monsters, but by focusing on their victims. And you can see the anguish in the faces of the people. And this juxtaposes itself perfectly with all of the survivor recollections of what was happening at that moment.
Lily Jacobs was a young woman from the Transcarpathia region of Hungary, and she and her community arrived in Auschwitz in late May of 1944. They were photographed upon their arrival. She was selected to work. The vast majority of her family were not. One of the iconic photographs in the Lily Jacob album is a picture of her two younger brothers who were killed upon arrival. Lily worked in Auschwitz and then was sent on a death march to Nordhausen, where she was liberated by the American Army. She was ill with typhus and was living in an SS barrack that had been converted into a hospital. She woke up in the middle of the night and was looking for a blanket. So she opened a drawer, and in it was this photograph album.
First page, she saw the rabbi of her town. And a number of pages later, she saw photographs of people she knew, including family, her paternal grandparents. And then she herself was in the photograph. It's really a unique document. It's the only document we have that shows us the whole process of what the Nazis were doing in Birkenau, save the gas chamber itself, up until the gas chamber. We've got this album opened up to a page with one of the kind of chapter headings that the two SS men who created this album put in there. In this case, it says Frauen bei der Ankunft, women upon arrival. A lot of these SS photographers have photographed this album is a very interesting question. We don't have a clear answer because they themselves aren't around to be interrogated or anything like that. We can only guess. Actually, it's quite remarkable that although we have quite a bit of documentation about Auschwitz, there are hardly any photographs that we have of Jews arriving in Auschwitz, the process of what the Nazis did with deportees. And nearly every photograph that any of us has ever seen in any museum or book or film of Jews arriving at the death camp is actually from this album. And this is therefore a rare and unique source.
In the increasingly difficult hope to maintain that if we understand the past, we somehow can react differently in the future.